Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon and watched smoke pour from the damaged control panels around him. The ship shook as another system failed somewhere deep in its metal belly. 3 days ago, they had been exploring the beautiful Kepler Nebula with its dancing colors and strange energy fields. Now they were fighting just to stay alive in the cold darkness of space. The pirate attack had come without warning. 5 ships had appeared from behind a small moon and opened fire before Jake could even order shields up. The Horizon was not a warship, but an exploration vessel built for science and discovery. Her weapons were small and her armor was thin. The pirates had torn through their defenses like paper and taken everything valuable they could find before disappearing back into the nebula. Now Jake's crew worked around the clock to keep their damaged ship moving toward the nearest safe port. Chief Engineer Ben Clark had been in the engine room for 36 hours straight, trying to hold the power systems together with spare parts and determination. The main drive was running at only 40% power and made terrible grinding noises that got worse every hour. Dr. Lisa Carter had her own problems in the medical bay. 2 crew members had been badly hurt when an explosion tore through Deck 3 during the attack. She had saved their lives, but they would need real medical facilities soon. Her supplies were running low and some of her equipment had been damaged by the same power surges that knocked out half the ship. But the strangest part of their situation was not the damage or the injuries. It was their unexpected passenger. The pirates had left something behind when they fled. In the cargo bay, Lisa had found an alien girl lying unconscious among scattered supply boxes. She was unlike any species Jake had ever seen in his 20 years exploring space. The girl's skin was a deep blue color that seemed to glow softly in dim light. It looked like crystal or polished stone, but felt warm and alive when Lisa touched it to check for injuries. Her hair was white as fresh snow and moved strangely as if it were floating in water, even though the cargo bay had normal air and gravity. She was small and thin like a human teenager, but her face had features that were clearly not from Earth. When the girl first woke up 3 days after they found her, she had been terrified. She spoke in a language none of them recognized and tried to hide behind the cargo containers. Her large silver eyes darted around the room looking for escape routes, and her whole body shook with fear. Lisa had spent hours sitting nearby, speaking softly and offering food and water, until the girl finally accepted that no one was going to hurt her. The ship's computer had eventually managed to translate some of her words. She called herself Zara and said she was from a people called the Catherians. Jake knew that name from the galactic databases. The Catherians were one of the most advanced species in known space. They had technology that made human science look like children playing with sticks and rocks. They were also known for thinking they were better than every other species in the galaxy. As Zara learned to speak basic English through the translation system, she began to tell them her story. She had been on a Catherian ship traveling through this region when pirates attacked them too. But her people had fought back with weapons that turned the pirate ships into clouds of glowing dust in seconds. The Catherians had rescued their own crew and cargo but left Zara behind. They said she was no longer one of them. Jake found this hard to believe at first. Why would anyone abandon their own people to pirates? But as Zara explained more, he began to understand. She had been cast out from her homeworld for what her people called the crime of compassion. The Catherian government had ordered all citizens to support something they called the Great Cleansing. This was a plan to destroy what they considered inferior species before those species could spread too far across the galaxy. Zara had refused to support this plan. She had spoken against it in the ruling councils and tried to convince other Catherians that it was wrong to kill entire civilizations just because they were different. Her people had declared her a traitor in exile. The ship she was traveling on had orders to leave her at the first opportunity. The pirate attack had given them that chance. Now she was stuck on a damaged human ship with the very people her species wanted to destroy. But as the days passed, Jake watched something interesting happen. Zara began to see humans not as the savage monsters her people described, but as individuals trying to help each other survive. She watched Ben work himself to exhaustion-fixing systems he barely understood just to keep everyone alive. She saw Lisa spend her own rest time sitting with injured crew members so they would not be alone in their pain. She observed how Jake made decisions not based on what was easy or profitable, but on what would keep his people safe. When the Catherian patrol ship appeared on their sensors, Jake knew their situation had just become much more complicated. The sleek silver vessel was 3 times the size of the Horizon and moved through space with the smooth grace of a hunting shark. Its weapons could turn their ship into scattered atoms before Ben could even reach for the emergency controls. Zara stood on the bridge beside Jake as they watched the alien ship approach. She had grown quiet as the translation system crackled with demands from the Catherian captain. They wanted to speak with the exile who was aboard the human vessel. They had come to take her home to face judgment for her crimes against galactic order. Jake looked at the young alien girl who had become part of his crew over the past week. Her silver eyes showed fear, but also something else. Something that looked like determination. She had found something aboard the Horizon that she had never known among her own people. She had found acceptance and friendship with beings her species considered worthless. The Catherian captain identified himself as Vex and demanded that Zara transport over to his ship immediately. His voice carried the cold authority of someone used to having every order obeyed without question. Jake started to respond, but Zara stepped forward to the communication console. Her voice was steady as she spoke to her own people in their musical language. Jake could not understand the words, but he could hear the strength in her tone. The translation system struggled to keep up, but managed to convert her reply into English. She told them she would not return. She declared her protection of the human ship and everyone aboard it. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Then Vex spoke again, and his voice carried shock and something that might have been pain. Zara had just done something that would change everything for both their species. She had chosen humans over her own people, and that choice would have consequences neither of them could imagine. 3 months had passed since the Horizon limped back to Earth with its unexpected passenger. Zara now lived on Luna Station, where human scientists studied her people's technology while she learned more about human culture. She spent her days working with Dr. Sam Rodriguez and his research team, trying to understand how Catherian science could help humanity defend itself against what was coming. The Galactic Council had finally made their decision about the human problem. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered on the ancient world of Nexus Prime to vote on humanity's fate. The meeting had lasted only 6 hours. The vote was unanimous except for 3 abstentions from species too small to matter. Humanity would be eliminated from the galaxy within 1 standard year. Commander Alex Turner received the official notification through the same communication channels that had once carried trade agreements and cultural exchanges. The message was polite and formal, as if the Council was announcing a change in shipping schedules rather than the planned extinction of an entire species. Earth had been classified as a threat to galactic stability and would be sterilized using approved methods to ensure minimal damage to local space. The human military had exactly 47 combat ships spread across 3 star systems. Earth's orbital defenses consisted of 12 weapon platforms built more for asteroid defense than military combat. Luna Station had experimental shield generators that might stop small attacks, but would be useless against serious military action. Mars Colony had no defenses at all beyond emergency shelters that could protect people for a few weeks underground. Admiral Kate Williams called an emergency meeting of all human military commanders and government leaders. The conference room at Luna Station filled with grim faces as she presented the intelligence reports Zara had provided. The galactic fleet heading toward Earth contained over 10,000 ships, including planet killers capable of cracking worlds, apart from orbit. Some of those ships were larger than human cities and carried weapons that could burn away atmospheres or turn entire continents into glass. The Dreknari were sending their war fleets that had conquered dozens of systems over the past century. The Zephyrians were bringing hive ships that could reproduce faster than humanity could build bullets to shoot at them. The ancient ethereals were contributing vessels that used technologies humans barely understood. Dozens of other species were adding their own ships to ensure that nothing survived when the cleansing began. Dr. Rodriguez stood up during the briefing and explained what his team had learned from studying Zara's knowledge of galactic technology. The good news was that human science was not as far behind as everyone thought. The bad news was that they were still centuries away from building the kind of weapons they would need to fight a galactic war. They had months to prepare for an enemy that had been perfecting warfare for thousands of years. But Admiral Williams had not become the highest-ranking officer in human space by giving up when faced with impossible odds. She looked around the room at the faces of people who had spent their careers exploring space and keeping peace between human colonies. Now they would have to become something else. They would have to become warriors fighting for the survival of their entire species. Colonel Amy Foster was put in charge of planetary defense planning. She had 3 months to turn Earth's cities into fortresses and its population into fighters. Every human settlement would need weapons and shelter. Every space station would become a military outpost. Every cargo ship would be converted into a potential warship. Captain Ryan Blake volunteered to lead the conversion of civilian vessels into combat ships. Mining ships designed to break apart asteroids could be fitted with military sensors and armed with their own cutting tools. Cargo haulers could carry massive amounts of explosives to enemy ships before detonating. Passenger liners could become troop transports or hospital ships depending on what the war demanded. Lieutenant Commander Maya Singh requested assignment to the new stealth technology program. Using principles Zara had explained about Catherian sensor systems, Dr. Rodriguez thought it might be possible to hide human ships from enemy detection. If they could not match galactic firepower, perhaps they could strike without being seen until it was too late for the enemy to respond. Zara worked 18 hours a day helping human engineers understand technologies her people considered basic knowledge. She explained how energy shields worked and why human attempts to copy them kept failing. She described the weak points in galactic ship designs that human weapons might be able to exploit. She provided detailed information about enemy tactics and strategies based on thousands of years of galactic warfare. The hardest part for Zara was watching humans prepare to become exactly what her people said they were. The Catherians had always claimed that humans were too violent and aggressive to be allowed among peaceful galactic civilizations. Now she watched human children learning to shoot weapons and human parents planning to fight to the death rather than surrender. She wondered if her people had created the very threat they claimed to be preventing, but she also saw things that gave her hope. Human families worked together to build shelters and weapons not just for themselves but for their neighbors. Human scientists shared their discoveries freely instead of hoarding knowledge for advantage. Human soldiers volunteered for the most dangerous missions because they wanted to protect people they had never met on worlds they had never seen. When the first enemy scouts appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system 6 weeks early, the human response surprised everyone, including Zara. Instead of panic or despair, the arrival of galactic forces seemed to make humans more determined rather than less. Admiral Williams moved her fleet to positions around the outer planets while Colonel Foster activated defense plans that turned the entire solar system into a weapon. The asteroid belt became a minefield seeded with nuclear weapons and sensor networks. Jupiter's moons were converted into military bases with long-range guns pointed toward empty space. Mars' colony disappeared underground while its surface was covered with fake installations designed to draw enemy fire away from real targets. Even Earth's moon was hollowed out and filled with enough explosives to damage any fleet that came too close. Captain Nicole Adams was given command of the newly built UES Defiance. The ship represented everything human engineering had learned from Zara's knowledge combined with human innovation and determination. It was not the largest or most powerful ship in human space, but it carried weapons and defenses that no galactic force had ever faced before. It was humanity's declaration that they would not go quietly into extinction. The galactic fleet that emerged from hyperspace expecting to find a primitive world ready for cleansing instead found a solar system that had been turned into a fortress. Every human ship was in position and every weapon was powered up and ready to fire. Earth's children were not begging for mercy or trying to negotiate for their lives. They were waiting to show the galaxy what happened when you tried to exterminate the human race. Admiral Williams broadcast a single message to the approaching enemy fleet. Her words were simple and direct. She told them that humanity had received their ultimatum and prepared their response. The galactic forces could turn around and leave, or they could stay and learn why threatening Earth's children was the biggest mistake their civilizations had ever made. Then she cut the transmission and gave the order that would begin the bloodiest war in galactic history. The Battle of Earth's Outer Rim began when the galactic fleet opened fire on what they thought was a small human patrol near Pluto. The 3 human ships exploded in brilliant flashes that lit up the darkness of space. The enemy commanders probably thought this would be the pattern for the entire war. They were wrong. Those 3 ships had been unmanned decoys loaded with sensors and broadcasting equipment. Every weapon fired at them was recorded and analyzed by hidden observation posts throughout the outer solar system. Human military computers mapped the location and capabilities of enemy ships before the real fighting even started. The galaxy's first lesson was that humans did not fight the way anyone expected. Captain Ryan Blake led the first real attack of the war. His squadron of 12 converted mining ships approached the galactic fleet from behind Neptune, where long-range sensors could not detect them easily. Each ship had been fitted with military engines and loaded with enough nuclear explosives to damage vessels 100 times their size. Blake's plan was simple and brutal. His ships would get as close as possible to enemy capital ships before detonating everything they carried. The mining ship Prospector managed to dock with a Draknari battlecruiser before the enemy crew realized what was happening. Blake triggered the explosives himself and took the alien ship with him in a blast that could be seen from Mars. His sacrifice destroyed a vessel that carried enough firepower to level entire cities. The other mining ships in his squadron followed his example and eliminated 6 more enemy ships before the galactic fleet realized they were under attack. Lieutenant Commander Maya Singh struck next, using the experimental stealth technology that Dr. Rodriguez had developed from Zara's knowledge. Her modified frigate Phantom could avoid most alien sensors by mimicking the energy patterns of space debris. She used this advantage to plant nuclear devices inside 3 enemy capital ships before they knew she was there. The explosions happened simultaneously and sent shockwaves through the galactic fleet that made their commanders realize this would not be the easy victory they had planned. But the enemy adapted quickly. The Zephyrian hive ships began launching swarms of small fighters that could search every piece of debris in the area. The ethereal vessels started using sensor sweeps that could detect human ships, even with stealth technology. The Draknari battle. Groups spread out to prevent more suicide attacks and began bombarding anything that moved with overwhelming firepower. The human fleet fought back with tactics that seemed insane to galactic observers. When enemy ships surrounded the orbital platform Guardian Station, the human defenders did not surrender or ask for quarter. Instead, they turned their own station into a massive bomb and took 40 enemy vessels with them when it exploded. The blast was so large it created a temporary nebula that interfered with sensors for hours afterward. Colonel Amy Foster coordinated the defense of the inner solar system from her command center, buried deep under Luna Station. She watched her carefully planned defensive positions get destroyed one by one as the galactic fleet pushed through the asteroid belt toward Earth. But every position they took cost the enemy ships and time. Every human who died took alien soldiers with them. Every defensive platform that fell damaged enemy vessels before being destroyed. The battle for Mars colony became a symbol of human determination that shocked the galaxy. The underground shelters had been designed to protect civilians from orbital bombardment, but Colonel Foster had turned them into military bunkers filled with weapons and volunteers. When Catherian troops landed on the surface, they found empty buildings and fake installations. The real fight happened underground in tunnels and chambers where human defenders used every dirty trick they could think of. Private Jake Cooper was 19 years old when he volunteered to defend Tunnel 7 with nothing but conventional explosives and determination. He held off an entire squad of Catherian soldiers for 6 hours before dying in an explosion that collapsed half the tunnel system. His sacrifice gave civilian transports time to escape from the colony and reach the relative safety of Earth's orbital defenses. The galactic fleet had expected to eliminate human resistance on Mars in a few hours. Instead, the fighting lasted 3 weeks and cost them over 200 ships along with thousands of troops. When they finally declared the planet secured, they controlled only empty buildings on the surface. The human colonists had escaped and the defenders had died taking as many enemies with them as possible. But the real shock came when humanity's counterattack began. Dr. Rodriguez and his team had spent months working in hidden laboratories while the battle raged around them. They had reverse-engineered galactic technology and combined it with human innovation to create weapons that could level the playing field. The quantum virus they developed could shut down any ship's computer systems and leave enemy vessels helpless in space. Captain Nicole Adams led the counterattack aboard the UES Defiance with a fleet of newly constructed ships that incorporated alien technology with human engineering. Her vessel carried shields that could stop galactic weapons and guns that fired energy beams capable of cutting through the strongest alien armor. More importantly, her ship carried the quantum virus that would turn the tide of the entire war. The virus spread through galactic communication networks faster than enemy technicians could stop it. Within hours, hundreds of enemy ships found their computers failing and their weapons powering down. Some vessels lost life support and had to be evacuated. Others drifted helplessly while their crews tried to restart systems using manual controls that had not been used for centuries. Zara watched the battle from Luna Station and broadcast reports to the galaxy describing what she witnessed. She told them about humans who fought impossible odds without hesitation. She described parents who died protecting children they would never see grow up. She explained how an entire species had chosen extinction over surrender and made their enemies pay for every victory with blood and metal. Her broadcasts were carried by sympathetic members of neutral species who had grown tired of the Galactic Council's authoritarian rule. For the first time, many civilizations heard the human side of the conflict. They learned that Earth's people had never wanted war, but had been forced to fight for their right to exist. They discovered that the savage monsters described by Council propaganda were actually families and communities trying to survive against impossible odds. The turning point came when human forces began capturing enemy technology intact. Teams, led by engineer Ben Clark, boarded disabled alien vessels and stripped them of everything useful. Human scientists reverse-engineered galactic weapons and defense systems in weeks instead of years. More importantly, they learned how to build ships that could match enemy capabilities while maintaining the tactical advantages that human creativity provided. The galactic fleet that had come to cleanse humanity from the galaxy found itself fighting an enemy that adapted faster than they could develop countermeasures. Human ships began appearing with weapons and defenses that matched their own. Human tactics became more sophisticated while maintaining the unpredictable creativity that made them so dangerous. Worst of all, human determination never wavered even when facing overwhelming odds. Admiral Williams realized that her forces had achieved something impossible. They had stopped a galactic fleet with primitive technology and desperate courage. But more than that, they had proven that humanity could not be eliminated easily. The species that had come to Earth expecting easy victory now faced an enemy that would fight for every star system and make them pay for every world they tried to take. The retreat of the galactic fleet from Earth marked the beginning of a new phase in the war. Humanity was no longer fighting just to survive. They were fighting to claim their place in a galaxy that had tried to destroy them. Admiral Jack Peterson took command of the newly formed human expansion fleet with orders that would have seemed impossible just months before. He was to take the war to enemy territory and establish human control over strategic star systems. Dr. Helen Burke worked around the clock to reverse engineer the technology captured from disabled enemy vessels. Her teams had access to weapon systems that were centuries ahead of human science, but they approached each discovery with the same innovative thinking that had saved Earth. Instead of simply copying alien designs, they improved them by combining galactic engineering with human creativity and tactical insight. The first human colony ship to leave Earth's solar system was the UES Pioneer, carrying 10,000 volunteers to establish New Terra in the Proxima Centauri system. But this was not the peaceful colonization mission that humans had once dreamed of. The Pioneer was heavily armed and escorted by 12 warships equipped with the latest hybrid technology. General Mark Thompson commanded the military forces that would secure the system and establish defensive positions. Captain Tony Garcia led the deep strike missions that targeted galactic infrastructure throughout the local arm of the galaxy. His ships moved fast and hit hard before enemy forces could respond. Communication relay stations went dark across dozens of systems. Supply depots exploded in brilliant flashes that could be seen from neighboring worlds. Military bases found their defenses compromised by human sabotage teams that appeared without warning and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Catherian home fleet discovered how much the war had changed. when Garcia's squadron attacked their main shipyard. At Kepler Station, the facility had been building vessels for over 1,000 years and was protected by defensive systems that had never been challenged. Human stealth ships penetrated the outer defenses and planted quantum viruses in the construction computers. The explosions that followed destroyed half the shipyard and set galactic ship production back by decades. But humanity's greatest weapon was not their improved technology or innovative tactics. It was their ability to turn enemies into allies. Commander Sarah Lewis led diplomatic missions to species that had been forced to support the Galactic Council's war against humanity. She offered them something the Council never had. She offered them freedom from a system that treated them as inferior partners in someone else's empire. The insectoid Chitauri had been conscripted into galactic service despite their peaceful nature. When Lewis approached their queen with an offer of alliance, the response surprised everyone. The Chitauri provided detailed information about galactic fleet movements in exchange for human protection of their breeding worlds. Their insect fighters began attacking Council supply lines, while human ships defended Chitauri space from retaliation. The aquatic depths dwellers had been providing raw materials to galactic shipyards for centuries, while receiving almost nothing in return. They joined the Human Alliance after Lewis demonstrated that humanity would treat them as equals rather than subjects. Their underwater cities became hidden bases where human ships could repair and resupply without detection by Council forces. Even some energy-based species like the Luminates began providing covert support to human forces. They could not fight directly, but they shared intelligence about galactic troop movements and provided early warning when Council fleets approached human territory. More importantly, they began spreading the story of human resistance throughout the galaxy using communication methods that Council forces could not intercept or block. Captain Lisa Wright commanded the diplomatic vessel UES Harmony as it traveled to dozens of worlds seeking new allies and trading partners. She discovered that many species in the galaxy had their own grievances against Council rule. The Zeridians had been forced to surrender their most valuable colonies to Catherian expansion. The Vorthon Confederation had seen their trade routes monopolized by Council-approved corporations. The nomad fleets had been restricted to barren systems while richer worlds were reserved for Council members. Each human victory brought new alien technology and new recruits to their cause. But it also brought the galaxy's growing fear and desperation to stop them. The Council declared martial law across dozens of systems and began conscripting civilian populations for military service. Ancient defense pacts were activated to bring more species into the war. Resources that had been used for peaceful development were redirected to building weapons and warships. The Battle of Rigel 7 became the largest space engagement in galactic history when Council forces tried to stop human expansion into the core systems. Over 3,000 ships fought in a battle that lasted 18 hours and left debris fields that would be navigational hazards for generations. Admiral Peterson's forces were outnumbered 4-1, but they had advantages that numbers could not overcome. Human ships fought with coordination that seemed impossible to galactic observers. Individual captains made decisions that supported fleet-wide strategies without needing orders from high command. When the flagship UES Defiance was disabled by enemy fire, 12 other vessels immediately moved to protect it while engineering. Teams restored power and weapons. Enemy fleets tried to divide and conquer human forces, but found that every ship fought as if the survival of the entire fleet depended on their individual actions. The quantum virus had evolved into something even more dangerous. Dr. Burke's latest version could not only shut down enemy computer systems, but could also reprogram them to serve human purposes. Galactic ships found their own weapons turning against them, while their navigation systems guided them into asteroid fields or the gravity wells of nearby stars. Some enemy vessels switched sides in the middle of battle as their computers were taken over by human military hackers. But the most shocking development was how quickly human colonies spread across captured territory. The UES Pioneer had been followed by dozens of other colony ships carrying hundreds of thousands of settlers to worlds that had been cleared of enemy forces. Human children were born on worlds that had been alien territory just months before. Human families built farms and factories on planets that still showed the scars of recent battles. New Terra became the capital of humanity's first interstellar empire within 6 months of its establishment. The planet's orbital defenses were stronger than Earth's had been before the war. Its shipyards produced vessels that combined the best of human and alien technology. Most importantly, its government offered citizenship and protection to any species that wanted to escape Council oppression. Zara watched these developments from her position as humanity's unofficial ambassador to sympathetic alien species. She had helped create something she never intended when she first defended humans against her own people. The species she had protected was becoming exactly what the galaxy had feared. They were spreading across the stars not as peaceful explorers, but as conquerors who took what they wanted and defended it with superior firepower and unwavering determination. The galaxy that had tried to eliminate humanity was learning that their attempted genocide had created a new threat. Earth's children were no longer asking for permission to exist among the stars. They were taking their place by force and making it clear that anyone who tried to stop them would face the same fate as those who had already tried. The hunter had become the hunted, and the prey was proving to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. 2 years after the Battle of Earth's outer rim, the galaxy looked very different than it had before the war began. Humanity controlled 15 star systems and commanded a fleet that could challenge any galactic power. Human colonies had been established on 37 worlds that had once belonged to Council species. The UES Retribution served as Admiral Kate Williams's flagship as she prepared to launch what could be the final assault of the war against the Catherian homeworld itself. But Zara stood on the observation deck of the massive human dreadnought and wondered what she had created when she first chose to defend humanity against her own people. The species she had protected was no longer the same one she had found aboard the damaged exploration vessel Horizon. War had changed them in ways that went deeper than new technology or military tactics. It had changed their souls. The children, born during the war years, knew only conflict and struggle. They played games that involved capturing enemy positions and defending human territory. Their bedtime stories were about brave soldiers who died fighting alien monsters. Their schools taught them to shoot weapons alongside mathematics and literature. An entire generation was growing up believing that the galaxy was full of enemies who wanted to destroy them. Human colonies were armed fortresses surrounded by defensive barriers and weapon emplacements. Every settlement had underground bunkers that could protect the population from orbital bombardment. Every family owned weapons and knew how to use them. Even the most peaceful human communities were prepared for war, because war was all they had known since leaving Earth. The Galactic Council had finally realized that their attempt to eliminate humanity had created exactly what they had feared most. A species with nothing left to lose and everything to gain was spreading across the galaxy, taking whatever they wanted and destroying anyone who tried to stop them. The very qualities that had made humans seem dangerous before the war had been refined and focused by years of combat into something truly terrifying. When the Council's final offer of peace arrived through diplomatic channels, Admiral Williams called a meeting of all human military and civilian leaders. The proposal was everything humanity had once wanted: full membership in galactic civilization with voting rights and territorial recognition, trade agreements that would make human worlds wealthy, cultural exchange programs, and access to galactic technology and knowledge. Captain Lisa Wright read the peace treaty to the assembled leaders and pointed out that accepting it would give humanity everything they had originally sought when they first reached for the stars. They would have their place among galactic civilizations, and their children would grow up in a universe of endless possibilities. The war could end and reconstruction could begin. But Admiral Williams looked around the room at faces hardened by 2 years of desperate fighting and asked the question that everyone was thinking. Was this the same humanity that Zara had defended, or had they become something else entirely? The people gathered in that room had seen their homeworld attacked and their colonies threatened. They had watched friends die and enemies fall. They had learned that the galaxy was not the peaceful place they had hoped to find. General Mark Thompson spoke for many when he pointed out that the Council was only offering peace because they could no longer win the war. The same species that had voted unanimously to exterminate humanity were now asking to negotiate because human fleets threatened their own worlds. They were not offering friendship, but acknowledging that they had failed to eliminate a threat. they had created themselves. Dr. Helen Burke had spent the war years studying galactic technology and learning how advanced civilizations maintained their power over others. She warned that accepting council membership might be a trap designed to limit human expansion and development. The galaxy had tried to destroy them with weapons and failed. Now they might try to control them with laws and bureaucracy and diplomatic obligations. But there were voices arguing for peace as well. Dr. Sam Rodriguez pointed out that humanity had achieved its original goals and more. They had proven they could not be eliminated and had carved out territory among the stars. Continuing, the war would only bring more death and destruction to both sides. Their children deserved a chance to grow up in peace rather than constant preparation for battle. Commander Sarah Lewis had spent months negotiating with alien species and building the coalition that supported human expansion. She believed that many galactic civilizations genuinely wanted peace and were tired of the endless conflicts that council policies had created. Humanity could be a force for positive change in the galaxy if they chose cooperation over conquest. The debate lasted for days as human leaders struggled with a decision that would determine the future of their species. They had fought for the right to exist among the stars and won that fight through superior tactics and unbreakable determination. Now they had to decide what kind of future they wanted to build with the victory they had earned. Zara was asked to speak to the assembly about her perspective as someone who had seen both sides of the conflict. She stood before the people she had defended and tried to explain what she had observed during the long years of war. She had watched humans fight with courage that inspired their allies and terrified their enemies. She had seen them show mercy to defeated foes and protection to innocent civilians. But she had also seen them become harder and more ruthless with each battle they fought. The humanity she had first encountered aboard the Horizon had been curious and hopeful about their place in the galaxy. They had wanted to explore and learn and build relationships with other species. The humanity that now controlled 15 star systems was suspicious and aggressive and ready to fight anyone who threatened them. They had survived by becoming what their enemies claimed they were. When the final vote was taken, the decision was closer than anyone had expected. Human leaders chose peace, but only by a narrow margin, and only with conditions that ensured their security and independence. They would join galactic civilization, but not as junior partners subject to council authority. They would be equals with the right to defend their interests and expand their territory as they saw fit. The peace treaty that ended the war gave humanity everything the council had once refused to consider: full voting rights in galactic government, territorial sovereignty over all worlds they had captured, the right to maintain their own military forces and defensive alliances. Most importantly, recognition as a major galactic power with the authority to act independently in matters affecting human interests. Admiral Williams signed the treaty aboard the UES Retribution, while human fleets maintained position around the Catherian homeworld. The message was clear to everyone watching. Humanity was choosing peace, but they were negotiating from a position of strength. They had the power to continue the war and win it completely if the galaxy failed to honor its agreements. In the months that followed, human colonies spread across their new territory as civilian settlers replaced military occupiers. Trade agreements brought alien goods and technologies to human worlds, while human innovations began appearing in galactic markets. Cultural exchange programs started bringing young people from different species together to learn and work and build friendships. But the scars of war remained visible everywhere. Human children played in parks built on worlds that had been battlefields. Human artists created beauty from the ruins of alien cities. Human scientists worked alongside former enemies to push the boundaries of galactic knowledge. The galaxy had learned to accept humanity not through understanding or friendship, but through fear of what would happen if they tried to eliminate them again. Zara's final transmission to the galaxy was broadcast from Earth as she stood in the same park where she had first learned to understand human nature. She told them that she had defended humanity because she believed in their potential for good. They had proved her right by refusing to be destroyed and showing that they could build as well as fight. But they had also proved the galaxy's fears, justified by becoming something stronger and more determined than anyone had imagined. The species that had once dreamed of peaceful exploration among the stars now ruled through strength and vigilance. They had earned their place in galactic civilization not through diplomacy or cultural achievement, but by proving they could not be eliminated. The galaxy regretted trying to destroy humanity, not because it was morally wrong, but because it was the greatest strategic mistake in galactic history.